Hello, everybody. Michael Robertson Jr. here, along with Jason Collins, and this is something brand new at the Hallowed Horror Podcast. We've been waiting for this for a while, Jason, something that we could slide into this new format with, and that is basically episode recaps of a television show. We've been waiting for something to come on that would fit the mold of the kind of film and TV that we talk about, and here it is. So this is episode 1 of our episode recap / review, and we're going to start with the brand new HBO series Lovecraft Country. Yeah,
buddy, I'm really excited about this new format. Yeah, like you said, we've been looking forward to it for a while, and I think we knew Lovecraft Country was going to kind of fit the bill for us for this new episode format, and here we are. They just dropped the first episode last week, and here we are to talk about it. Sorry, you started shaking your head, so.
Oh, I didn't realize I was. Sorry. Oh. So it's like, okay.
Way off.
First, what? What is it?
Whenever I look down and you're shaking your head, it's like I'm either muted or something's going technically wrong.
Sorry. Yep.
You threw me way off there.
Got it. But yeah, this is episode 1. We have been waiting for something. We watched the trailer for Lovecraft Country when it first came out. It's been a few months, and I think we did talk about this briefly in this week's most recent movie review podcast episode, where I said, I wasn't super excited based on the first trailer. Like, it looked good. I was interested enough to go read the book, which I did. But when the second trailer hit and I saw like a lot more of the story elements, the more fantastical story elements start to kind of come out in the trailer, that's when I got really, really excited to watch it. And episode 1 did not disappoint at all.
No, it did not, man. There was a whole range of emotions and excitement and just everything that it covered. It was a really great episode. I didn't know much about it going into it, only from what you have told me about it. I did not read the books. So I was coming in with more of a, fresh mind about it and the whole story.
Right.
So I'm really, really excited, other than the storyline, just the kind of plot line that goes along here. I don't know if this really covers the entire storyline either. The storyline that's written here on IMDb. You said that I seem to remember we talking about it, and we went over what was said on IMDb, and you said that really only covers part of it.
Yeah. I looked at IMDb when I was making my notes earlier, but it almost looked like the general television show synopsis that they have, the description, almost matches up exactly with the synopsis for episode 1, which really only covers the first story in the novel.
Mm-hmm.
So is that where you're headed with this?
In the novel, like, how did the storylines go? You summed that up pretty well when last time we talked about it.
Right. So like we said, this television series is based on a novel written by Matt Ruff, and then it's sold as a novel. And I've seen other books do this before, but the word novel is almost kind of misleading. It is actually a collection of chronological stories. I don't remember exactly how many there are. I want to say there was like maybe 7 or 8, maybe even 9. Just individual stories that all chronologically fed into each other, had some sort of cross-pollination, characters that continued throughout, but they were each basically individual units that kind of, reached an ultimate climax where all these little bits and bobs have kind of fit together and have told an overarching story. But the first story in the book is basically the synopsis that we're seeing on IMDb for this television show, and where the first episode is taking place. We have not finished the first story with the first episode. So that does answer the one question that I had, was this going to be more of an anthology where each episode matched up with one of the stories from the book? So they're definitely not doing that. There's going to be multiple episodes per story, perhaps, at least for the first story, because we're not done yet. And I did see a few exchanges and some dialogue and some stuff showed here as well, where they're kind of already dropping some hints and setting some pieces in motion for some of the future stories that were after the first, even in the first episode of the show. So they've definitely written this from more of a, I guess, linear television format, which I think is good. I think that's the better way to go about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I did watch one interview with Jonathan Majors, and who plays Atticus, and there was one question that it kind of went along the lines of, can you tell us anything about how the storyline is going to go, without spoiling anything? And he basically just said, pay close attention to every character that you meet. And that just reminded me of what you said, how the storyline's going to go in the book, how it's like each character, you follow a new character in each story, but they're all sort of related. So it's kind of daisy chaining from character to character.
Right.
So I'm excited to see how that really plays out throughout the season.
Yeah. And a perfect example of that is in the first story, Letty in the book, she is much more of a secondary character than she is, I think, so far in the first episode of the television show. I mean, she's still prominently featured in the first story, but this main story is really about Atticus at its core. In the second story, we basically then fall into Letitia's timeline, and we're with her as she's the main protagonist and some stuff that she's doing along with her sister. So
okay.
That's kind of a good example of that. Yeah, I think the way I described it was it's almost like a secondary character from every story becomes the main character going forward in the sequential story after that. So we'll see how they go. I mean,
that's interesting. That's really exciting. And listeners and viewers, disclaimer here, these are episode recaps, so these will be full of spoilers. So
yes,
if you don't want to hear the spoilers, please just pause us, go watch, and then come back.
Yep. Just like the movie reviews, we spoil the hell out of stuff. So that's just the way we roll here at Hallowed Horror. We like to talk about, like to get into details, and spoilers just happen. It's just the way it goes. So
yeah,
good job remembering the disclaimer this time, Jason. We forgot that last time.
Yeah, we sure did. So let's, I think we should start with the storyline on IMDb, because it does sum up the first episode. I don't know if if that bleeds much into the rest of the story or not. But Lovecraft Country follows Atticus Black as he joins up with his friend Letitia and his uncle George to embark on a road trip across 1950s Jim Crow America in search of his missing father. This begins a struggle to survive and overcome both the racist terrors of white America and terrifying monsters that could be ripped from a Lovecraft paperback.
Right. His name is Atticus Freeman, actually. I'm not sure why it says Atticus Black on the synopsis, but it's Atticus Freeman.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay, see, IMDb again, just screwing us up.
You just cannot trust IMDb anymore with their plot synopses.
Yeah, but that's right. And that really is the summary of the first story in the novel. The Atticus trying to find his dad, ending up in Lovecraft Country, so to speak, Arkham County or whatever it was. And that's the first story. So we'll see where it goes from there in terms of following with the book. But this was the premise of the first episode. This show stars, first of all, it was created by Misha Green and Jordan Peele. Jordan Peele, everybody's familiar with. Misha Green has got some pretty substantial writing credits to her name as well. The one that stood out to me was Sons of Anarchy, which was
she's incredible. She's amazing at what she does.
It's starring Jonathan Majors as Atticus. I just recently saw him in Da 5 Bloods, the new Spike Lee movie on Netflix. He was also in The Last Black Man in San Francisco, which I never saw, but I remember when social media was really hyping that up a couple of years ago about how good it was, but I never actually saw it. Did you watch that?
I did not.
Okay. Journey Smollett is playing Letitia Lewis. Most recently, you can see her in the Birds of Prey, the DC comic movie, which I also did not see, but I knew she was in it. Mm-hmm. She's got tons of television credits to her name, some pretty good stuff in there. And then, of course, Uncle George is played by Courtney B. Vance, with I think a lot of people recognize. I just saw him in Project Power, that new kind of action thriller on Netflix. So, also, I did not know he was the narrator in Isle of Dogs, which I thought was funny because I love that movie. But I didn't know he was a narrator. Anyway. Those are our three main characters. There are a couple side characters that we're introduced to that will play larger roles going forward. But those are the three ones that we really followed for the majority of this episode. And again, this is based on the novel by Matt Ruff.
Yeah, so that was the foundation of the first episode, character wise, and one of the reasons I really love these episodal series is because you can get so deep into the character development, and we've talked about that a lot. How much we love a really layered character, and so these in episodes you can get really really far into learning a single character. And in this, first hour, it was like an hour and 5 minutes, the episode was, you really got to know, Atticus, Letitia, and Uncle George, very intimately. I mean, I knew a lot about them by the end of the episode. There were, in that 1 hour, there were times that I felt sorry about what was going on, not from the racist standpoint, because that was just, really hard to watch, but more from family standpoint and kind of things she was going through, even, Atticus, his upbringing with his family. And so they touched on a whole lot of stuff right in that first hour, the relationships that each of them had. And I think what I'd like to do is really kind of get into some of the characters, really kind of break down who these people were. Who did you get, or what did you get from out of each character from this first episode?
Yeah, let's go there. I think that is a good place to start, just to kind of meet the characters and start this journey. But before we do that, I do want to say that the opening sequence of this show, I think it was very, very brilliant. And here's why. First of all, it was just a ton of fun. I mean, it's basically a dream sequence that Atticus is having. Of course, he is, a veteran, and he's basically in a battlefield and in the middle of war, basically. And it starts out as a normal, just kind of war scene. He's down in the trenches running, and it's filmed in a very unique way. I love the way that they filmed and edited this to make it look, kind of not real. It is kind of a dream sequence. But then it just explodes into this science fiction fiasco. It almost reminded me of the last big battle in the last Avengers movie, where everybody's just flying in to do stuff. It's a really, really just visually striking, really weird scene. In fact, my wife was watching the show with me, and as soon as this kind of opens up and we get this wide shot with all this space stuff happening, she's like, "What in the hell is going on here?" And I was like, "Just watch." But
it was really cool too in the way that it sort of mirrored the arc of the episode too. You start out with some sort of drama that's very that feels closed in. You're in the bunker. With the show, it was very much drama based in the first half, and then out of nowhere, it gets really science fiction-y, with the monsters that happen later on. And then, as you come out of that bunker, you're just seeing space stuff happen. So it was, that just occurred to me too.
Yeah. And this is why we do the podcast together, because that was exactly one of the points that I was going to make. You're reading my mind over here, but also I thought it was really smart to open with that, because I think it sets the expectation for the viewer. Like if you had not read the book, if you had not maybe watched the trailer or paid attention to the trailer fully and went into this expecting, a very vanilla drama, with whether it was racism or whether it was a mystery involved, with him trying to find his dad, because that's really the big point that they kept hitting in the first trailer. This kind of shows you right off the bat, this is kind of weird. This is kind of out there. Don't expect something normal. There's going to be weird stuff happening. We're going to show you right here in the first minute of film before we dive into the, more traditional mystery drama part of the show.
Yeah, one of those nothing is as it seems themes.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought it was a great opening scene, which rolling into what you were saying does introduce us to the main character of this episode, which is Atticus. So we've got a young black man, veteran. I'm assuming, I don't remember his exact age from the book, but I'm going to say it's probably late 20s. And he is returning home, traveling to, is it Chicago? That's where he's going. I think so.
It is Chicago. Yeah. He's from South Chicago.
Yeah. He's traveling back home to Chicago, across the country, to return home because he's gotten a letter from his father, basically telling him to come home because he has found out some very interesting information about Atticus's mother's family heritage, which we learn has always been an interesting topic in that family dynamic. So he's returning home, and when he returns home, he discovers his father is actually missing.
Right. And as you learn, more about his character, he, in his upbringing, he was not close with his father. Apparently he was hard to live with. I don't know if it was abuse physically or mentally. I don't know if they ever really got into that or not, but he was not a fan of his father.
Right.
And so he's a veteran. He's been to war. He's seen things. He's experienced things. He's coming home. And when he was younger, he was not the same kind of person, right? He was a smaller kid. He got picked on a lot. He was very smart, much smarter than everybody else. And
avid reader.
And an avid reader,
yeah.
Correct. So, he grows up, not only having some hardship in his house, in his home, but also having a hard time with his peers, and probably not really fitting in anywhere too.
Yeah, they kind of hit that with, a couple of the people that he sees when he returns home. They're like, oh, hey, his name was it Tick? Was that his nickname? Something like that.
I don't know.
They were like, they were all surprised to see who he had become. But the other part of this tragedy essentially is not only has he seen this awful stuff, gone to war and dealt with all of these horrible things, but he's coming home, to a country that, and I think this was his father who had kind of told him this. This is another piece of the discontent between him and his father, where they didn't see eye to eye. His dad was saying, why are you going to a war for a country that doesn't even do anything except persecute you to a certain degree because of your color of your skin. So, and that really is the primary focus of the drama of this episode, is not so much the Atticus trying to find his dad and the mystery of that. That's kind of like the cherry on top for this episode. That's kind of what's driving the characters, is the motivation to go find this lost relative. But the big drama here is really just showing the viewer the persecution that these people are living through in this time, and their lives dealing with that, which will kind of now segue us into Uncle George, who one of his businesses is him and his wife, they publish a travel guide for African Americans. I believe they call it, was it the Negro Travel Guide,
Safe Travel, I think is what it was.
Yes, where they're traveling around making notes and learning and experiencing places to tell others where it's safe to go, where can you eat, where can you sleep, where are the rules in certain towns,
and where it's not safe, just as important.
Right. So that is that's kind of the big point of why Uncle George joins up with him to go find, their father/brother, because he's going to go on a trip to make more notes. He knows where to go because of the book, stuff like that. So that's kind of the dynamic that we have here. Atticus and his uncle seem to have a good relationship. There's a little bit of moment of tension later on between them, but I think it was just more of some venting, nothing major.
They seem to have a very good relationship. And Uncle George, we learned that he is, he's a family man. He loves his wife. They are two, very much in love people. They have a daughter, a younger daughter, surprisingly. She's also a very great artist. She makes little comic books. I don't know if that's going to come back, later on.
It does,
but good. He's very community driven. He's looking out for other African Americans. He loves his family. He was so happy to see Atticus come home, and but he was a little pensive about what he was going to do, about his journey. He also seemed, and I don't know if you're able to pick this up on the books or not, but they did a good job. Like when they were in his shop and Atticus pulled out a letter and read it, it almost seemed like Uncle George knew more than what he was letting on, about maybe the family heritage, or maybe, something in the history he knew more about. And that might play, maybe it plays more into why he decided to come along as well.
Right. And the one other bond that Uncle George and Atticus have that he did not have with his father is the love of fiction. Again, I mentioned that Atticus was a big reader. Uncle George is also a big reader. And they liked the fiction stuff. They liked Lovecraft. They liked science fiction. That's something we learned about Atticus in the very beginning, even when he was, walking, getting to town, he's reading a book. He's reading science fiction, talking to this other lady about it. That's a big part of his character, which is, I think, really where the name of this book / show comes from. And especially the first episode, really kind of tying into some of the Lovecraft fiction, of old. So that's really where that character dynamic comes in. And then we get the third main character, which is Letty, Letitia, who is the most, I guess, what's the right word for her compared to the other two? She's the least put together of the three of them in terms of, I think, her life in general.
Yeah. Yeah. She's definitely a Spitfire. She comes in from who knows where, and they led that on too with the sister, like, oh, you just come out of nowhere. Apparently the only time she ever shows up is when she needs money. She's sort of the black sheep of the family. Their mother had just died and she did not make it to the funeral. So there's a lot of tension between her and her family. We meet actually a lot of her family. We meet her sister. We also meet her brother, and she doesn't really get along with either of them. So definitely a lot of tension. Like I said, black sheep of the family, but very motivated. She seems like she wants to turn her life around, but who knows what's going on in her head.
Yeah, she's definitely somebody who's trying to find her way. She's making an attempt to kind of figure things out. I think what she's really struggling with is, I think she has hit kind of close to her rock bottom, and she's trying to figure out how to climb out. And there's things that happen, like I said, with her and her sister I know it was the second story in the book. I'm not sure if it'll be where we go with the television show after we finish this particular plot line. But she's a good character. She has some interesting stuff that comes about with what she's doing in terms of bettering her life. So looking forward to seeing that.
See her character play out a little bit more.
Yeah. So those are our three characters. And right off the bat, I'll tell you right now, all of them fantastic. Just fantastic. Nothing to complain about from a performance standpoint from any of the characters that we saw in this. Some of the antagonists, like some of the hillbilly redneck kind of racist assholes. There was one or two of them that they were a little they were kind of a caricature, in terms of just their overbearing nastiness, if that makes any sense. I'm sure that there are people that are really like that, but they were a little, you knew it was going to hit hard when you saw some of these people come on, you know what I'm saying? Like, you knew that they were going to not handle this gently. It was going to be in a 0 to 100, in a second, the way they were going to flip, which is, understandable given the time period, but it also led to some of the most intense drama. The most tense moment for me and I knew it was going to happen because I read it, but the Sundown County, which actually the name of this episode 1 was named Sundown. That was the episode title. That moment where they were trying to get across the county line before the sunset, and he couldn't speed. The editing of that scene, with in the car and then looking at the sun and then looking and seeing the county line, the train tracks, and then the cop behind him and his face, man, that was such a tense moment. That was an amazingly put together scene.
Yeah, no, I agree. That was a great scene. Everything up until really that moment. Well, that's not true. There was the scene in the diner before that one. And we're going to sort of transition into the arc of the story in this first episode.
Right.
And so up until the diner, this was a story of a lot of drama happening, racism, family drama, Atticus trying to find his father, where are we going, kind of thing. There's a lot of drama happening really so well done drama, right? We get to the diner and they're not supposed to be there, and they run. This is the moment where you realize something supernatural is happening, because as they were driving away, there's a car, a very expensive looking car that was mentioned earlier in the episode.
We saw it earlier in episode 2. It was parked
what's
outside. We also saw it in the episode earlier as well. It was parked outside in Chicago.
Right. So, yeah, we see it parked. We know about it, and then we see it during this car chase, and we realize, okay, whoever's driving that car is obviously keeping tabs, following them, and they get in between the car that's chasing them, and I don't know what happens. The car turns, the big expensive silver car. So basically gets in between Atticus's, what do they call it? The Woody? Yeah. Uncle George's car.
Yeah.
It gets in between the Woody and the rednecks. And then it does like it hits a handbrake and stops and turns. From their perspective, it looks like it probably just flips over the car, but the camera angle, I'm sure it was, on purpose. That car never hits. And you realize at this point, something supernatural is happening. That car goes flying like it just hit a wall or some sort of, thing in the road. And it was a fantastic scene and a great introduction to this being more supernatural than maybe it's letting on to be.
Right.
And then from there, it gets even crazier.
Yeah, you're right. That really was almost the hard cut getting into the third act here, where we have, we've met the characters, we understand their dynamic, we know their mission, what what's driving this story forward. We got to find, Atticus's father. So they're traveling, and we see the racism, we see the drama they're dealing with amongst themselves and in the country. And it's all well and good. We're already invested. I mean, there's not a dull moment in this episode. I never got bored. I never thought this dragged. It was just, you're in it with these characters. And then they hit that point in the diner when they're fleeing, because they're obviously in a place that doesn't want them there. And that moment with the car, you see this cosmic element, now it's coming back into play here. And you're right, fantastic effect. And then, then night falls. And we're in the woods, and we have another just unfortunate situation with some more, cops that are extreme, just racist assholes. Yeah. And this is where the real Lovecraft, story really kind of comes out. This is where this show gets its namesake right here. This movie turns into a 100% science fiction action free-for-all real quick for probably the last, maybe 15 minutes or so. It was the last good bit of the episode.
Yeah. We see some glimpses in some weird noises, and then these like fantastic beasts just come out of the woods and just start ripping these cops apart.
Right.
Now I don't know much about H.P. Lovecraft, and I don't know much about his stories. I don't know if you do. Apparently he was known for his science fiction. Known for his, really fantastic monsters. And like you said, this is where these monsters come from, and they were so amazing. I loved how they compared them to vampires.
Yeah.
Well, when they made their way to the shack, they were saying, oh, well, they didn't like the light. So they were like, we got to make it till sunrise. Or maybe we can get the car, get the flashlights out.
Yeah.
And then one of these things get inside of the cabin, and it bites one of the cops. And Uncle George says, what happens when a vampire bites another person?
No, he was already bitten. His arm was missing, remember? That was the guy that had his arm missing.
That's right. His arm was missing. He'd already been bitten, but
I had the best line in the whole episode was when he starts to turn, and Uncle George was like, you need to shoot him right now.
Right.
It was so funny. Oh God, I love that line.
So this guy, he was bitten, and he turns into one of these just amazing monsters.
Shoggoth.
I mean, I just cannot. Yeah. I loved so much about these monsters. They were so fast and so strong, and they had about 1 billion eyes on them. Yeah. It was just so freaky.
Yeah.
And my gosh, I love the scene where Letitia gets into the car and she finally gets her lights on. And that monster hates the lights so much, he digs right into the earth like
Right.
it was nothing.
Yep.
So amazing. Oh man, it was so fun to watch.
I saw, speaking of like Letty getting to the car. So they're all in the cabin and they're understanding how the light is, working against them. Oh, by the way, Uncle George quotes a line from Dracula when they get in there about the children of the night, which kind of gave me chills when they said that. But anyway, when they realize they need to get back to the car, and Letitia's like, I was in track or whatever, and she takes off. I saw somebody on Twitter post a GIF of her like sprinting, and it was like, this is how you run in a horror movie, when she's just like booking it through the woods. And I was like, yeah, damn right. So basically they survive. The cops do not. Our main characters do. And once the sun comes up, they kind of realize they've inadvertently emerged exactly where they need to be after trekking through the woods here in Arkham County, where Atticus's father is supposed to be. And they see this just amazing, immaculate landscape with this enormous mansion up on the hill. And that's kind of where we leave off. We've reached our destination. Now we got to see what's going on. So start to finish, A+ for me on this episode.
Oh yeah. A++. It was amazing. 10 out of 10. I loved everything about the show. Great story so far. Like I said, I don't know the story. I didn't read the books. I am just 100% invested. I love that HBO is doing the episodes per week. It really builds the anticipation. I've gotten a little, I'm being able to binge whole seasons on Netflix. While it was pretty fun for a few years, it's sort of taken the fun away from waiting a week, and really, the anticipation of the episode dropping the next week.
Yeah, it almost turns it more into an event than binging, like, because there's been shows, HBO's always basically done this. They're a week by week thing. So I remember, my wife and I, when we were watching Game of Thrones, it was like week by week we had to wait, and you'd watch it, and then you go to work the next day and talk to everybody about it. What's going to happen next week? What do you think? You throw out your theories and everything. There's been lots of shows on HBO that I've enjoyed that are like that, and that anticipation build, like, don't discredit that. Like, you're right. In the age of streaming, binging's good and fun. If you have the time, you can do it. Doesn't mean you can't enjoy the show by any means. I mean, I just flew through the first season of Ozark in a week, which for me is ridiculously fast. And I was happy I could do that. But there's something about being able to just kind of wait for these episodes week by week that, you're right, it makes it fun, and also good for us because we can take a break in between recording these episodes back to back. So that's right. I think I'll give my final impressions and you can give yours. I thought that again, A+, I loved the production value. I don't think you get any better. The acting was phenomenal. I loved the color. I thought it was a beautifully colored show. Everything popped that was supposed to. It was just the pacing, I can't stress that enough. I talked about that in our other podcast episode when I was talking about me binging Ozark. I thought the first episode of Ozark was a masterclass in pacing and really grabbing you with a hook and pulling you in. I thought this one, I don't know, there's not as many plot lines going on as there is in Ozark, but this grabs you. You want to know what the hell's going on. You're already invested with the characters. They're dynamic. They're not cardboard cutouts. They all have feelings and emotions and motivations driving them to something. 100% enjoyed this. I can't wait to see where it goes. And I'm excited because, one thing with short stories versus novels is that, there's not a lot of room to meander, to have it slow down. You get from A to B without having to bore the reader because you're in this shorter length. Because this book is basically a collection of shorter set pieces, I'm really excited for this show because I don't think we're going to have any episodes where we're like, oh, that was just a filler. Oh, that was just to get from point A to point B. We had to have this bridge, because you see that in some shows. It's just kind of, you have to have, every once in a while, you get those moments of exposition that make for a less exciting episode. I don't think this show is going to have that.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and an excellent point. Especially after you were talking about how these stories flow together. Story to story or chapter to chapter. So I'm excited about this entire show. Now, this first episode was so amazing. I'm not always a huge fan of like period, like timepieces like this where we're back in, back in a different decade, but this was so well done. The pacing, like you said, was just so amazing. The production value, the cinematography, the coloring was just so polished. I mean, it just from a visual standpoint, it was just so pleasant to watch, and the acting was great. I mean, it was just, I love the characters. I can't wait to see more of them. I can't wait to meet more characters. I'm excited. I'm so excited about this show. Yeah,
there's some really fun, like, big stuff that's going to happen that I'm really looking forward to see, like how they shoot it. There's this episode, aside from the monsters, like this episode is nothing compared to some of the stuff that's going to happen later. So there's some really slick stuff. So, all right, well, there you go. Episode 1 of Lovecraft Country did not disappoint. We loved it. Can't wait for next week's episode. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be it for us today at Hallowed Horror Podcast. Thanks for listening so much, or thanks for watching if you're on YouTube. If you want to do us a favor, if you could, like or subscribe on YouTube, or leave us a review on the podcast platform of your choice, we would greatly appreciate it. Every one of those helps us, trust me. So until next time, stay safe, and we'll talk soon.